We remember our martyrs, our holy ones, our brothers and sisters who were massacred on October 7th, the deadliest day for the Jewish people since the Holocaust, and all whose lives were cut short in brutal captivity. We remember our heroes who perished on that horrific day and since in defense of the state of Israel and the Jewish people. Yehi Zichram Baruch. May our memory of each and every soul be for a blessing. Please join me in reciting the Mourner's Kaddish in memory of our fallen. Kindly rise as you are able. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah Be'alma divirach chirutei v'yamlich malchutei. B'chayechon v'yom yechon uv'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael. Ba'agalau v'zman kariv v'yimru amen. Yehei shemei rabba mivarach le'alam olomei olmaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnasei. V'yitadar v'yitale v'yitalal shmei dekudsha b'richu. Li'ela min kol birchata v'shirata. Tushbechata v'nechemata. Tamiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shalama rabba min shemaya. V'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Please be seated. As we pay tribute to all who are lost but not forgotten, we pray as well for the families whose lives have been shattered. We pray for the hostages of diverse nationalities and faiths and their loved ones who continue to live through unending horror. We pray for the soldiers in harm's way, the wounded and the maimed. May they return safely and healed to the warm embrace of their closest ones. We pray for the innocents who are victims to the war, human beings created b'tselem Elohim, in the image of God. We pray for the world to wake up and state through its actions, there is no place in our society for anti-Semitism or any forms of hate. Od lo avda tikvatenu. We, the AJC family, are filled with tikva, with hope, affirmed and buoyed by the dramatic, heroic rescue of 4 hostages yesterday. Noah Argamani, Almog Meir Jean, Andrei Koslov, and Shlomi Ziv. Lihiyot am chofshi be'artzenu be'olamenu. We will not rest until we are a free people, at peace in our land, in our world. We have gathered together to shape a new future, and thus we begin.
As we learn more about the atrocities committed by Hamas,
we have some really disturbing new information.
There was no mercy shown as the elderly, the women, the children, the babies were kidnapped.
This news is beyond devastating.
What's believed to be coordinated posts with disinformation about the war.
Police action is triggering more mass protests.
Police have issued a dispersal order.
Tense moments as protesters outside.
I don't feel safe on campus right now.
Agenda number 1 is to free our hostages.
Proud of our people who will never, ever give up hope.
And it cannot be tolerated when people are marching and advocating for violence against Jews.
We are all on the same path to destruction if we indulge this 1 second longer.
I have huge respect for the American Jewish Committee, for its historic role, for what it does, for its impact on the Jewish world.
The AJC.
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 The AJC.
The AJC.
AJC.
AJC is the global advocacy organization for the Jewish people.
Please welcome AJC President Michael Tickner.
Good evening, and welcome to AJC Global Forum. As demonstrated by the incredibly moving presentation that we just experienced, this is a global forum like no other. Like all of us, I stand here today with mixed emotions. The past 8 months have brought so much loss, anguish, pain, fear, and uncertainty. But at the same time, in the face of tremendous tragedy, anti-Israel hatred, and anti-Semitism, the Jewish people have remarkable resilience. Our pride in being Jewish has only grown, and our resolve as a community has strengthened. On the one hand, there are days in which we all feel like it is still October 7th, and it seems that we cannot go about our days without learning of another anti-Semitic or anti-Israel action, from college campuses to cities and towns throughout the country and across the globe. It's also deeply overwhelming. On the other hand, as you just heard from Rabbi Marins, and is worth repeating, there are days like yesterday when the entire Jewish people rejoiced and let out tears of joy and relief when, after 240 days in captivity, the IDF miraculously rescued Noah Argamani, Almog Mayajan, Andrei Kozlov, and Shlomi Ziv. The swing from dark lows to joyful triumphs has been the experience of global Jewry, both for the past 8 months and for more than 5,000 years. Knowing that we have always overcome darkness gives us the strength to keep going. Finding and preserving light when it seems almost impossible is the very essence of the Jewish people. We will continue to mourn all those who were murdered by Hamas terrorists and the soldiers who have since paid the ultimate price protecting the Israel people. Among them, Arnon Zamora, who led a part of the forces that rescued the 4 hostages yesterday, was critically wounded and ultimately passed away. We will not allow the world to forget them or why Israel is fighting this war of self-defense. We will continue to pray for the thousands who have been wounded, as well as those who have been internally displaced from their homes. And we will not rest until more than 100 members of our family still being held hostage are brought home. We are more energized and more committed than ever, and that is what has brought us here to AJC Global Forum. Through American Jewish Committee, the global Jewish advocacy organization for the Jewish people, we join together in the power center of government to demonstrate to the United States and the world that the global Jewish community and our allies are united and more determined than ever to stand up for the Jewish people and the state of Israel. I want to express a warm welcome and sincere gratitude to our Jewish communal partners and friends and allies from 50 countries who have traveled to be with us today. We at AJC are so proud to work with you to advance our mutual goals. Over the course of the next 2 days, we will examine the most pressing issues facing the Jewish people, advocating with diplomats, members of Congress, and thought leaders, engaging with fellow Jews and partners from around the world, and working to shape a new future for all of us. On a personal note, having become involved with AJC more than 20 years ago, I have to say that I have never been more proud to be part of this incredible organization. I want to thank our remarkable staff, from our regional offices around the country, to our overseas colleagues, to our support staff, and everyone in between. Each and every one of you has worked tirelessly to respond to this unprecedented moment. We are so grateful for your tireless efforts. I also want to give special acknowledgement to the AJC Jerusalem staff, led by Avital Lebovich, who, more than most of us, have faced extraordinary circumstances. AJC Jerusalem team, on behalf of everyone at AJC, thank you for rising to the occasion during this incredibly challenging time. Please join me in thanking them for their incredible and tremendous efforts. To begin our program, in a moment we will hear from Orna and Ronan Nutra, parents of Omer Nutra, one of the Israeli-American hostages still held captive in Gaza. Every day since October 7th and throughout this program, we carry every hostage with us. As you'll see in this ballroom, we have empty seats saved in the front as we await their return. There are empty seats to the left and to the right of the ballroom with yellow bands. Orna and Ronan, in your tireless efforts for Omer, please know that we all stand with you, always. We are deeply grateful that you are able to address us today. Before Orna and Ronan join us on stage, please turn your attention to the screens.
We had an opportunity to come to the United States, and little did we know that we're going to start a business. We're going to have our children born here.
We embarked on our journey with our new family, which is the Schechter family.
He was the captain of the soccer team, then he was the captain of the volleyball team, then a captain of the basketball team.
He started off at the Mid-Island YJCC, then he went 2 years in Sprout Lake, then USY Wheels, then JNF Roots in Israel, and then he was a staff at Raman Nayak. He's a person that brings people together, and he does it out of the good of his heart. He went through the process of applying to colleges. He was accepted to a few places. He committed to going to Binghamton. We felt that it would be a good idea to take a gap year. And so he joined a program, it's called Mechina, for Israeli kids before they joined the army.
Slowly started to build some internal conflict. Am I going back to university or am I drafting?
And he made his decision.
You don't draft an army mainly because of a culture. You volunteer because you believe it's the right thing to do, and that's what he believes.
Every time he could, he called home, and he put a lot of effort into maintaining it.
He was stationed with his team on the Gaza border. There was a lot of activity generated by the Hamas on the fence. They were throwing all kind of small bombs. They've been in the tanks working 18 hours a day. The night of October 6th, he calls and he speaks with Orna.
Omer was fairly relaxed. He said that it had been quiet on the border.
I'm checking my phone just before going to sleep. I'm starting to read reports on ground attack. So immediately I'm like texting Omer, what's going on? Talk to me. Are you okay? But we never got an answer.
A few hours later, what I'm hearing from high command, most likely he was kidnapped by Hamas.
That's the last we know about Omer. We don't know his condition. We don't know if he was hurt.
No matter what your political opinion is, why is it so difficult to see that there's a humane crisis here? This is my child. He's an American citizen. He was born here. He grew up here. Bring Omer home. Bring all the hostages home now.
Please give a warm welcome to Orna and Ronan Nutra.
Our son Omer decided to leave his comfortable life behind, and after much deliberation to join the IDF and become a lone soldier, away from his family, away from his home. As a family, this move wasn't easy. Under regular circumstance, if we had lived in Israel, we'd be waiting for Omer when he came home every few weeks with his favorite meal, helping him with his dirty laundry, and supporting him through the difficult stages of training. But we were far, here in the United States most of the time, and he managed. He was very independent, most of the time minimizing his needs. He leaned on family, and mainly on his community of friends, newly founded relationships that he developed, which came to mean a lot to him in his new life in Israel. We spoke daily whenever he could. It was the highlight of our day. We made sure to travel and spend time in Israel with him when he was on breaks, and to bring him home to Long Island when he could get away.
I keep thinking to myself, how is Omer experiencing all of this? Everything that is happening? What has been going through? What he would be sharing with us if he could speak about the events of October 7 and every day since. Omer would say, in the early morning hours of October 7, just like any other morning, I gathered my team. We followed our morning routine. We jumped into the tanks and got ready for sunrise. This morning was very different. Suddenly, a barrage of missiles came flying through the skies, falling all over us. We began receiving messages that there was a possible breach of the border fence with Gaza. There was no time. I quickly started giving instructions. Our job was to protect the nearby kibbutzim. We rushed to the border with our 2 tanks and a small Golani infantry unit. Shortly after we reached the fence, we were ambushed by hundreds and hundreds of Hamas ISIS terrorists, well-trained, waiting for us, shooting our tank, multiple RPGs and explosives. My tank slowed down. We were experiencing a failure. The brakes were jammed, and we could only advance very slowly. An RPG hit us. Our driver, Shaked Dan, was injured gravely. Our tank was put on fire. I tried to communicate with head command and requested a rescue, but there was no answer. And nobody came. We could hardly breathe. We had no choice. We had to go out or we'll die. Shaked and Oz were killed in this attack. Nimrod Cohen and I were pulled out, half-conscious and wounded. We were quickly loaded onto pickup trucks and taken violently into Gaza, where we were separated. I was hurting and wanted to escape. I was tossed into a dark tunnel. I heard shouts in Arabic and was transferred from one tunnel to the other. It was dark, and every day seemed like an eternity. Explosions all over. I'm constantly hungry. I'm constantly thirsty. I want to see the sun. I want to speak. I want to stand. I miss my mom. I miss my dad. I miss my family. I miss my friends. I'm afraid I may die, but I hide it from the other guys surrounding me. I find myself trying to lift the others as I struggle to keep the hope that we will be released one day. I run in my head the events of October 7 time and again. I mourn the murder of my teammates. I wonder what happened to the other tank I sent north. What happened to the Golani team? To the other Golani lone soldier I had grown friendly with, Idan Alexander from Tenafly, New Jersey. 8 months. 8 months. Are they coming to rescue us? Did Israel survive? Are they looking for us? I can remember when I was in elementary school, we prayed daily for the release of another soldier, Gilad Shalit, until one day he was finally brought home. Are they praying for me now?
We all heard yesterday of the miraculous release of the 4 hostages, Noah, Almog, Andre, and Shlomi. Unfortunately, this amazing feat did not come without a price. And at the same time, we mourn the loss of Officer Arnon Zamora, who led this mission. We are at awe with the bravery of the many soldiers fighting this war, many of them brothers in arms to Omer. They share with us how they are all vying for the opportunity to be the releasers of the hostages. They are trained on the ethos of not leaving anyone behind. But we must also acknowledge that most of the remaining 120 hostages
will not be released in a military operation, and the only way they can get home is through negotiating with the devil. Last week, President Biden delivered an update on his efforts to secure a deal that would lead to a durable end to the war. The deal on the table would release all the hostages, lead to an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, get more humanitarian assistance into Gaza, and ultimately end the crisis. The President has spent months of intensive diplomacy working this with Israel, Egypt, and Qatar. His message was clear. Hamas needs to take the deal that Israel has offered and is on the table. Here, on this side of the ocean, the Netanyahu deal, as we call it, should be supported by both sides of the aisle, as our hostage release effort should continue to be a full bipartisan effort. Mounting pressure should be placed on Hamas by all the mediators and countries with influence to make Hamas accept the deal.
By ending the war and releasing the hostages, Hezbollah in the north will also stop its ongoing attacks on Israel, and political solution should bring tens of thousands of Israeli refugees back to their homes. Israel's resilience cannot be measured only by the strength of its army, rather by the strength and resilience of its people. The events of October 7 greatly damaged Israel's sense of security and trust in the government and army as protectors of its citizens. Recent polls show that over 62% of the Israeli public believes that war must come to an end in return for a comprehensive hostage deal. The healing and restoration of this resilience must begin with the release and return of the hostages. Leaders must put political agendas aside and focus on the lives of the hostages as the most urgent matter at stake. The elimination of Hamas is important, but will take time and patience, and the leaders must focus on the urgent. As we all know, as successful as the operation yesterday was for some, we have also, as recent as last week, heard of 4 hostages that were murdered in captivity.
And from you, our audience and friends, today, we ask, speak up. Many Americans are not aware that 45 American citizens were murdered on October 7th. 12 were taken hostage, 8 are still in captivity, 3 of them deceased, and 5 who are considered alive, amongst them Omer, our son. The United States is not just a mediator in a hostage release deal. It was and is still targeted by Iran proxies daily. Our son Omer is a New Yorker and an IDF soldier and a hero. He did the right thing and was in the wrong place at the wrong time. This could have been any one of your children. Omer, this situation is not normal, and we refuse to get used to it. We know you are alive. We know you are strong. We are not losing faith. We believe in you, in Am Yisrael, in our communities, and all the good people we learned to know during our fight for your release. They fight for you as you fought and are fighting for them. We will bring you home.
And I just want to mention a big thank you for the AJC organization. They've been an amazing partner for us and for all the other hostage families in our difficult journey. They held numerous meetings for us and helped us on the Hill, and will be forever grateful to the AJC. Thank you. Am Yisrael Chai.
Very much.
Orna and Ronan, it's hard to find the right words. We are all standing with you and will not stop our efforts until Omer and all the hostages are home. Before we continue our program, we have spoken of yesterday's heroic operation that brought home 4 hostages. This was the 3rd successful operation of its kind. We cannot continue without taking a moment to celebrate this moment where once again we have found light amidst the darkness. May this be the reality for the Nutras and so many others as soon as possible. Please turn your attention to the screens.
שימו לב, קהל נכבד, אנחנו מצילי עיריית תל אביב-יפו שמחים ונרגשים לבשר לכם כי 4 חטופים חולצו בשלום ובחיים משבי החמאס בעזה. החטופים הם נוער זמרי, שלום זיק, אלמוג Am Yisrael Chai.
Please welcome AJC Associate Chair of the Board of Trustees, Tony Meyer, and Sophie and Bernard Gould Leaders for Tomorrow program alumna, Olivia Meyer.
עוד לא עבדה תקוותנו להיות חופשי בארצנו שמע ישראל כולנו עם אחד.
Good evening. We now continue in our theme of finding light in darkness by turning to stories of courage and sacrifice that we will highlight each day on our plenary stage in a recurring segment titled Heroes of Israel. These individuals, are glimmers of humanity and heroism that shine brightly and give us hope in unimaginably difficult circumstances.
Ordinary citizens in moments of unimaginable crisis have risen to become extraordinary heroes. Their actions remind us of the resilience and indomitable spirit that define the Israeli people. They are men and women who, in the face of unimaginable terror, chose to act with bravery and compassion. Their deeds, whether saving a neighbor, protecting a child, taking care of the wounded, or standing defiantly against the forces of hatred, should be honored as profound examples of the strength of the human spirit.
These heroes of Israel embody the best of us. They reflect the light of hope and the power of unity in times of despair. Today, as we begin here to pay tribute to these remarkable individuals whose stories of heroism and humanity will forever inspire us, let us never forget that even in the darkest of times, there are those who rise to light our path forward.
Embodying this spirit in every sense are Tzvi and Dorit Reder. Tzvi, a medic and ambulance driver with Magen David Adom, and Dorit, a nurse, showed incredible bravery and selflessness on the fateful morning of October 7th. While treating the wounded, they learned about the tragic fate of their family members, yet, despite this unimaginable personal loss, Tzvi and Dorit persisted in their mission to provide care and comfort to those in need. Tzvi and Dorit are true heroes of Israel. Please direct your attention to the screens.
Please join us in welcoming Tzvi and Zorit Rader.
תתארו לכם שבת רגילה, השעה 6:30 בבוקר, שמחת תורה, אנשים רגועים, שותים כוס קפה ובדרכם לתפילה. ולפתע אלפי רקטות וטילים ומאות מחבלים שמסתערים במטרה אחת, לרצוח. אני צבי רידר, יליד ירושלים, בן לאמא ילידת פולין וניצולת שואה. גר בקיבוץ סעד שבעוטף ישראל, 3.5 קילומטר מגבול עזה. דור, בנינו השני, נרצח בקיבוץ בארי באותה שבת, בשעה שעבד בבארי כחונך לילד בעל צרכים מיוחדים. דור נרצח בטרם הגיע לגיל 22, ביחד עם חברתו תכלת בת ה-18. בשבת השחורה, ב7 באוקטובר, מהבוקר ועד הצהריים, אשתי דורית שנמצאת איתנו כאן, ושנולדה וגדלה בקיבוץ סעד, ושהיא אחות במקצועה, ואני נהג אמבולנס שמתנדב במד"א, טיפלנו והצלנו חיים של עשרות אנשים שכל חטאם היה שהם יהודים. באותה שעה חיות אדם רצחו, התעללו, אנסו וחיללו את כבודם של החיים והמתים. מטרתם הייתה להביא חושך, ואילו אשתי ואני מנסים להביא אור ולתת תקווה.
מעולם לא חשבתי שחיי כאימא ואחות השתנו לנצח באופן כל כך חד, דרמטי ובלתי צפוי.
באותה שבת נמנו כ-1,400 נרצחים, כ-3,000 פצועים ויותר מ-220 חטופים, ביניהם נשים, קשישים וכ-30 ילדים קטנים. מה עוד צריך לזעוק בכדי שהעולם כולו יתעורר מול מעשי הזוועה הבלתי נסלחים הללו? לסיום, ארצה להעביר מספר מסרים. אין לנו ארץ אחרת, ואנחנו נלחם עליה עד דמנו האחרונה. ננצח בכוח היחד שלנו ובשיתוף הגורל של כולנו. אנו חזקים ונחושים לחיות בביטחון. חזרנו לביתנו בסעד אחרי פינוי של 5 חודשים, ואנחנו פועלים במרץ לשקם את האזור כולו. דור שלנו הותיר לנו צוואה של אחדות, של ערבות הדדית ושל עזרה לזולת. הניפו בגאווה את דגל ישראל.
למרות המציאות שנכפתה עלינו באכזריות כעם ובוודאי גם כמשפחה, החלטנו לבחור בחיים ובהמשך עשייה למען הציבור כולו.
ונסיים ברשותכם בשלוש קריאות. עם ישראל חי! עם ישראל חי! עם ישראל חי! אני מבקש להודות לכם בשם אשתי דורית ובשמי על ההזמנה וההזדמנות לדבר בפניכם. תודה מקרב לב.
Shalom, dear friends from the President's residence in Jerusalem. It gives me great pleasure to share brief remarks with you from Jerusalem at this critical time. A lot has changed over the more than a century since AJC formed against the backdrop of pogroms in Tsarist Russia, and still so much sounds and remains familiar. Still today, that most tenacious conspiracy doctrine, anti-Semitism, lurks within our societies, and still today, Jews and the Jewish state need protection and advocacy. The AJC has always been clear. The protection of Jews isn't just about Jews. The protection of Jews is about protecting our societies, protecting our democracies, protecting all of humanity from the corrosive effects of hatred and prejudice, protecting the entire free world. So, my dear friends, on October 7th, the earth shook. It shook because of the brutal massacre here in our Jewish state. It shook also because of the speed with which it was forgotten and even denied, because of the ease with which fierce anti-Israel sentiment came out into the open, in places designed to be guarantors of justice, in places designed to be strongholds of free thought. Truth is bowing yet again before hatred. Calls to free Palestine of Jews masquerade as social justice on college campuses. In the ICC, the leaders of democratic Israel and Hamas jihadist terror masterminds are outrageously equivocated. Iran and its axis of the terror proxies, this empire of evil, is attempting to isolate Israel in the international arena, and alarmingly, at times, it is working. But October 7th proved that while hatred lives on, so does our resilience. Since the earth cracked open, we have seen alongside the searing pain so many reminders of our gifts. The global Jewish community has stepped up, have come forward for Israel. So, dear friends, this connectedness is a resource that we must actively nurture and protect. Even before October 7th, I put the full force of my presidency behind that axiom. Kol Ha'am, my initiative called the Voice of the People, was the name we gave to my initiative to form a global Jewish council on the most pressing issues facing our people. Its urgency has only grown. I hope all of you will come on board to bring your voices to this dialogue and conversation. I want to thank my good friend, AJC CEO Ted Deutsch, who has so beautifully taken on the helm from our good friend David Harris. Ted is working tirelessly on these front lines for all of us and I want to thank him and the entire beautiful team of AJC. I also want to thank President Michael Tichono and Director of AJC Israel, Avital Leibovich. I thank each and every one of you for your presence today and for gathering it up so that we get our objectives done. May our hostages find freedom as soon as possible. May our soldiers return home safely and victorious. May our wounded heal in soul and body. May our evacuees come back home from north and south, and may we all be whole again. Thank you, Todah, and Shalom.
That Saturday morning, when I started realizing from communications what happened, I felt like I was kicked in the stomach by a mule. I mean, it was visceral. And the Israelis are going to solve this problem. We have to be part of that effort, and being a member of AJC gives me tools to be part of that effort. Well, my dream for Israel and the Jewish people is to live in peace and prosper and live their lives in a loving, healthy way. The Talmud in Shavuot 39a says, Kol Yisrael Aravim Zeh B'Zeh, which loosely translated is, all Jews are responsible for each other. And in my life, responsibility is not a passive thing, it's an active thing. I'm responsible to my family, my employees, my customers, and the best way I have found is to fulfill that responsibility is to join AJC and be an active member of AJC. AJC has a strong foundation and is going to be here for the long term. I felt that my investment in AJC would be there for the future with a strong organization that will continue to stretch to meet its goals. I don't know of any other Jewish nonprofit that has that capability.
Please welcome Chair of AJC's Board of Governors, Bobby Lapin.
Having begun our program with a focus on the tragic events of October 7th and on the remarkable resilience of the State of Israel and of the Israeli people, it is only fitting that we now turn to the broader Jewish global community, those who, along with our Israeli brothers and sisters, have been so deeply impacted by October 7th and its aftermath. As Michael mentioned earlier, at this global forum, we are blessed to have representatives from Jewish communities from all around the world with us. To each of you, allow me, on behalf of all of us, to once again welcome you all and to emphasize how committed we are to our joint efforts to stem the tide of rising anti-Semitism. We will now have the opportunity to zoom out and to examine the rise of anti-Semitism and anti-Israel sentiment from a global standpoint. First, we will commemorate the 30th anniversary of the Amia bombing in Argentina, a key moment in the experience of global Jewish history. We will hear from Donnie Pomerantz and Amos Linetsky, the executive director and the president of Amia. We will then have the honor of hearing from a panel made up of representatives from Jewish communities from around the world, including Anthony Housefather, member of the Canadian House of Commons and parliamentary secretary to the president of the Treasury Board, Ariela Agosin, president of the Jewish community of Chile, Emma Halali, president of the European Union of Jewish Students, and Karen Milner, national chairperson of the South African Jewish Board of Deputies. Happily, this conversation will be moderated by our own Melanie Marin-Pell, AJC's Chief Field Operations Officer. So please first turn your attention to the screens.
Please welcome AMIA Executive Director Daniel Pomerantz and AMIA President Amos Linetsky.
On the morning of July 18, 1994, a car bomb laden with explosives destroyed the historic AMIA building, the umbrella organization for Argentina's jury, in downtown Buenos Aires. This attack resulted in 85 dead and 3,300 injuries and remains the deadliest terrorist attack in Argentina history.
2 years earlier, a similar attack has struck the Israeli embassy in Argentina, resulting in the tragic loss of 89 lives. Justice has not been served in either case. Both have been characterized as crimes against humanity, yet impunity continued to reign supreme. The Argentine state has been unable over these 30 years to ensure that those responsible for orchestrating and carrying out these terrorist attacks are brought to justice and held accountable for their crimes.
The pain remains. The wound is still open. I know this firsthand. I am a survivor of the AMIA attack. In a few weeks, we will all commemorate the 30th anniversary of this tragedy. It is beyond disheartening that, even after so many years, we must continue to raise our voices and demand justice. Another anniversary where we must loudly proclaim, justice delayed is justice denied.
We all know by now who was behind these atrocities: Hezbollah and its master Iran. This is why Interpol has repeatedly issued red notices or wanted alerts against several Iranian and Hezbollah officials. That is why a few months ago, Argentina's justice system reiterated their culpability at the highest level, strengthening the case for action against the accused in the international arena.
American Jewish Committee has stood by AMIA from the day one. Together, we have advocated in Argentina, Washington, D.C., and in capitals around the world for increased efforts from like-minded countries to combat terrorism committed by Iran and its terror proxies. We must reinforce our collective efforts to counteract those that oppose the democratic values we all uphold. Terrorism has no boundaries and respects no one, as we have seen in countries around the world.
July 18, 1994 was one of the most tragic and sorrowful days in Jewish and Argentinian history, a modern pogrom driven by deep-seated anti-Semitic hatred. Thank you, AJC, for giving us this platform and for standing by us permanently and unconditionally in our quest for justice. We know that the day will come when impunity will end. We have dreamed of that day now for 30 years, and the dream will continue to inspire us until justice is finally served. Thank you.
Thank you.
Please welcome Karen Milner, Anthony Housefather, Emma Halali, Ariella Agosin, and Melanie Marin-Pell.
Forum. Nice to see you all. Thank you all for being here today with us for this really important conversation. We have an incredibly distinguished group of guests representing different parts of the world, and we have very little time together, so we're going to really dive in. I'd like to frame the conversation this way. We could spend our time telling horror stories about anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism in our respective parts of the world, and these are stories that must be told. However, in the time we have today, I'd like us to endeavor to understand where we go from here. So each of you represents a different part of the world. And whether it's Canada or Europe or Latin America, South Africa, or even, dare I say, the United States, some members of the Jewish community are asking shocking questions. Do I belong here? Is there a Jewish future for me and my kids here? And if so, what will that Jewish future look like? So let's begin. Anthony, I'd like to start with you. You're a legislator in Canada. You've been very outspoken against your government and your own party's approach to the Israel-Gaza war. And it has been your message to your colleagues in the House of Commons. You've been quite vocal about this, but what has been your message and what legislative tools are you using, or do you believe we can use to pursue some outcomes that will be more favorable for the Jewish community?
So it's been very shocking. I come from a party in the center-left, and Canada, like the United States, is one of the very few countries that has a bipartisan consensus or has had a bipartisan consensus on Israel, where the center-left party, our Liberal Party, is as pro-Israel as our Conservative Party on the center-right. And that has been the case in the 8 years that I've sat in the House, and it sort of fell apart over the last 5 or 6 months as I watched many of my colleagues who previously had been very supportive of my stance on Israel suddenly disappear. And I've faced motions and resolutions in the House that I've had to vote against from my own party, and it's been deeply disappointing. But what I've tried to do is, again, emulate what we've done in Congress. So, number one, I convened hearings at the Justice Committee, which is our version of the Judiciary Committee, on anti-Semitism, focusing on college campuses. I had colleagues from my side that joined me in sending a letter to all the biggest presidents of universities in Canada. We confronted the presidents and called them out on not adopting IRA, on not including Jews in diversity, equity, and inclusion programs, on not enforcing their codes of conduct to allow encampments on their schools. And what I've tried to do is legislative tools, in addition to the recommendations that they adopt IRA, they include Jews in DEI programs, that they make sure that they apply their codes of conduct. We also, at a federal level, as opposed to in the US where it's at the state level, control the criminal code. So I've been proposing bubble legislation, which would mean that you can no longer block entrance or exits to places of worship, schools, or community centers. That has happened in Canada through demonstrators chanting offensive chants. I propose to have a government-wide strategy on IRA, which we have adopted as a Canadian government, to have a handbook on IRA that we will send out to provinces, municipalities, and universities, telling them how to implement IRA. And of course, trying to work with police across the country to have the attorneys general at the federal level and at the state level, in our case provinces, tell everybody exactly how they're supposed to apply the criminal code and make sure that they're actually enforcing it against people that are crossing the line. So I think there's a lot of legislative tools we can add to them. But what I ended up resolving myself is that because even though I'm frustrated about Israel, you know, I am still who I am. I'm still a liberal at heart. And I've got to push my party back to the right place on the issue that I don't agree with them on, as opposed to just forgetting that I agree with them on a lot of other issues. And that's what I've been trying to do.
Ariella, in December, AJC convened more than 100 Ibero-American and U.S. Jewish leaders in Chile, where they unanimously endorsed AJC's Santiago Declaration, reaffirming regional commitment to fighting anti-Semitism, to standing by Israel in the war against Hamas, supporting democratic values and human rights worldwide, and promoting continued collaboration. How do these hemispheric partnerships help strengthen your efforts, especially in a country like Chile, which has adopted such an overtly hostile posture toward Israel?
Well, first, thank you very much for having me here, and I have the opportunity to talk to you about this and what is happening, and also for AJC to have been in Chile for that opportunity when we signed that document. It is certainly very important that we all work together on this, and I think we can all agree that this is a moment in which we are really one Am Israel, and Kol Israel Arevim Ze Lazeh. So it's more important now than ever to be together. And in the neighborhood, it's not easy. You can see what is happening in Colombia with Petro. You can see what is happening with AMLO in Mexico. And we see Brazil and Nicaragua and Bolivia and also Chile. So we have to work together to fight these ideologies that are really putting in danger all what we have achieved in so many years, not only for the Jewish people, but for everybody, for democracies. So it's very important to work together. And in the case of Chile, in which we have a president that is clearly and openly against Israel, and he hasn't met, for example, with the Jewish community since he came to the office. For us, United States, for example, it's very important as a country. So if we have the support of United States or the American Jewish Committee or other countries, it makes us to feel more capable of talking to the government and talking to other people, and to make, we have a very particular situation in Chile, and I don't know if everybody knows, but we have the largest Palestinian community outside of the Middle East. So we also have, we don't have only problems with the government, but we have problems with the civil society. And from that point of view, having the civil society seeing that we are not alone, and even if they are a lot, because there are many people there that are supporting, not only because they are Palestinian, but also because they are with the cause. It's very important to see that we are not alone, that we are together, and even a picture of this beautiful audience is incredible for us and help us to fight in these difficult moments.
Great. So speaking of countries taking a hostile posture toward Israel, Karen, South Africa has led the effort to bring Israel before the International Court of Justice on charges of genocide, which has created an incredibly challenging climate for the Jewish community of South Africa. The viciously anti-Israel African National Congress has showed that it faced a little bit of a decline in the recent elections. It lost some support, it lost its majority. So can you help us interpret these results? And does it signal a possible shift in attitudes towards Israel, or was it driven by other factors?
Sure, thank you very much. Firstly, thank you for having me here. And they say since October the 7th, the Jewish heart beats in unison, and I certainly feel it over here. So thank you very much. Thank you. But if the Jewish heart broke globally on October the 7th, the South African Jewish heart broke again on the 29th of December when, as you said, our government took Israel to the ICJ. The little sliver of hope that we have in our community has been fighting our government tirelessly since then, has been the elections that we knew were coming and that we knew would signify a drop in the percentage of vote that the ruling party, the Liberation Party, the ANC, had. What's been really interesting is that the ANC fought this election very much on a foreign policy, Israel-Palestine platform. All of their platforms before the elections were run with them in Palestinian scarves or kafirs. And the very, very last thing that our president said in the very last election rally to the country that is suffering from a lack of electricity, water, etc., the very last thing he said was the cry from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, before the elections. So fortunately, the good news, there is some good news of that. Although there had been, it had been intended that, we knew that they would drop, they dropped significantly more than anybody had expected, to just under 40%. And I know there's some South Africans in the audience, so they'll understand this. They got what this is the good news, they got what we call in South Africa a snot clap, which means they got a smack that the... I'll leave the rest to your imagination. Yeah. So that's the good news. The politicking, that was partly, not entirely, but partly a distraction, really achieved very little in terms of gaining them votes. In particular, the Muslim community, which I think that they had expected to come out for them, did not come out for them. That's the good news. The less good news is they remain, at just under 40%, the biggest proportion of votes in the country. They will continue to hold significant power in the country, and it's unlikely, I think, that the major positions, including foreign affairs, will shift completely. We will, and hopefully with your help, we do have a brief time, I think, and a bit of an opportunity here to continue fighting. It's really clear that this foreign policy won them no votes. There's no support really for the levels of anti-Semitism the way we're seeing around the world. We're not seeing them in South Africa, oddly enough. The hostility is all from our government. It's not coming from the street. And I believe that with your help, we will continue to fight from the southernmost tip of Africa, the only voice in the African continent against the government's position. We'll continue to fight it. And I think that with some extent, we can perhaps push it back a little bit. Unfortunately, I can't say that there'll be a massive shift in the foreign policy, but we can say that what they did try to achieve was not achieved in terms of the domestic support that they were hoping to get. Thank you.
We will take good news in whatever way we can find it. So. Emma, I'd like to ask you, all eyes have been on students, and certainly here in the US, but also around the world. And we've seen Jewish students, and so many of you are here, so thank you, Jewish students, all of you who are here with us today. We've seen all of you, many of you, all of you here at least, standing firm and proud in your Zionism and Jewish identity. And we've seen examples of such extraordinary courage and resilience in the faces of unspeakable circumstances. So for this room of several thousand Jewish leaders and allies, and for all of those who are watching on the live stream, what is it that Jewish students need from all of us to help turn the tide?
Thank you very much for receiving me. I will start by saying that 7th of October tried to destroy our generation. They really try to scare us. But what we've seen on campuses and in the society in general is that it failed. It failed because on campus we saw the resilience of our Jewish students. We saw that they did not give up, and they will not give up. We saw that they were proud Jews on campuses. They did not start hiding, even though it was very complicated. We saw it. So you already did it, but I really want to give another round of applause for all the Jewish student leaders that are at the forefront on campuses, here in this room. And I highly encourage you to look on your left and on your right. You will for sure find a student, whether it's a student from Greece, a student from the UK, a student from Argentina. I really encourage you to discuss with them. They have a lot to talk about. This is the moment to also ask them personally what they need. I will give you some example. I think that what we need from you at the moment is, first, you to trust us, to trust the youth. We know what we're doing. I assure you we know what we're doing. Trust and to listen, because it's different, to listen to us as well. I think, in terms of support, there are so many different ways to support us. Just a couple of examples. If you have a law firm, you can also help us having legal advice when it comes to maybe suing universities or other forms of legal advice. If you're a psychologist, you can also help us with providing your help and your availability for our students. If you have political contacts, as Anthony also said, to help to push for IRA definition, the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance definition of anti-Semitism on campuses, we need them. Your student representative, the unions of students in their countries, they need the support of the community and anyone else that can also support. And lastly, if you don't have a law firm, if you're not a psychologist, if you don't have the political capacity, you can also help financially. I think I have to say it because it's very important to understand that for some of our unions, and especially in Europe, we've seen lately that they were facing a choice the choice was for some to decide whether to host a Shabbat dinner or to invest a budget in printing posters for the hostages. And I don't think that should be a choice for the student union. They should be able to, at the same time, foster their Jewish life and be proud in their political activism. So these are some ways for you to help and to support us. Thank you.
I think you came here with a fan club, but it just grew exponentially, which is very exciting. In our final moments, we don't have a lot of time, so I'd like to zoom out a little bit and look at the bigger picture. Is this tidal wave of anti-Semitism, this anti-Israel mob mentality that we see, this propaganda war on Israel and on Jews, is this a harbinger of more to come? Is this an all-out assault on the ideals of liberal democracy? And if so, what do we do? So, that's a simple one. Anthony, I'll start with you.
Wow, what an easy question.
Yeah.
Look, I can only speak from the Canadian perspective and the American perspective because these are the two countries that I can pretend to understand. I believe that the vast majority of Canadians and Americans are with us. They abhor the anti-Semitism. They support Israel. This is a small, loud, angry group that is holding our country hostage, that is yelling nasty, hateful things at college campuses and on streets, but they don't represent the majority of our populations. We live in the two countries in the world that not only are the golden Medina, as our ancestors would have called it, they've given our people opportunities that no other country in the world has ever given. And we, as a community, have done more for these countries in proportion to our numbers than anyone else. And so if you ask me the first question, is there a vibrant future for the Jewish community in North America? Absolutely there is. This is our home, and we will ensure that our countries continue to have the legacy of the Jewish community, not only today, but 1,000 years from now.
Emma, do you think that your generation understands what is at stake?
I think that my generation actually more than understand and actually live it every day. As I said, they are on the ground. They are the ones that are being called fascist Zionists the minute that they want to stand for Israel or just to fight against stereotypes, anti-Semitic stereotypes, and everything. So I think we are more than aware. And at the moment, also I would like to mention that today for Europe, it's an important day since we just had the results of the European Union elections. I have to be honest with you, I think for our generation, it's one of the darkest days for Europe when it comes to this rise of political extremism. And we, the youth, we are aware of this, and we will continue to fight against political extremism and the rise of populism everywhere. We need this fight. I mean, you all know that fighting against anti-Semitism and hatred is not the fight of the Jews, but it's the fight of each and every single one of us, and the society in general. So we will continue to build alliances with non-Jewish organizations, with other minorities. It is tough. I'm never going to say the contrary, but it is very much needed. So we are aware, and we will continue to fight.
And Ariella, do you think that people in Chile, at some point, non-Jews in Chile, will start to sort of wake up and realize that what is happening is not good for them either, that it really requires, as Emma said, all of society to respond? And what more can it do? What can we do? And what more will it take for people to realize that?
Well, I think that there are many people in Chile and in the world that realize it, but there are many people that haven't. And that's something that has to make us really aware that we have to work together. So first of all, I think we certainly have to try to gather our resources to work together in communications and also in people that are not Jews and they can speak up for us, because that's very important. But I think that we see Israelis, they are fighting in Gaza, in Israel, and we need to fight in social media, and everybody has to fight in social media and in the press. Every one of us has to be a soldier of Israel in social media and with this propaganda, and we have to work together. We have to manage to work everybody together to fight this terrible propaganda that we have seen in the last months.
Absolutely. Thank you. And Karen, what about allies? How can we involve more sectors of society in finding solutions?
So I think from South African point of view, we really are quite fortunate. Despite the very negative position of our government, we had what we called a Seder plate at one stage, which was something put out by BDS, which spoke about which parties to vote for that were anti-Israel and which parties not to vote for that were pro-Israel, and they're all neutral. And there were quite a number of parties that are, in fact, either pro-Israel or neutral. So that's one ally that we look at. And certainly the Christian community. South Africa is a deeply, deeply religious country. They have a tremendous respect for the Bible, for the Old Testament, and we have many allies there, and we are working with them. And I think that for us as a community, and I think globally, it's important not to feel the whole time that we are alone, because we're not. We have allies, we have friends, we must work with our friends, and I really do rely, there's an African expression which is called Ubuntu, which means I am only a person because you are a person. And I think that that's really a strong message against hate, is recognizing the personhood within all of us.
Beautiful. We have a couple of minutes, so I'm going to ask you all, what gives you hope? You just gave us a little bit of an answer. Anthony, what is giving you hope in these moments?
What is giving me hope is that people understand, more and more people are understanding that anti-Semitism is not a Jewish issue, right? That the biggest tropes about Jews, that Jews control the world, there's a threat to our democracy and a threat to our constitutional order. Because if you believe that, why have fair and free elections? Why believe in the results of an election? They understand that it's a national security issue, that it's not our friends down the street that are writing these horrible anti-Semitic posts. They're coming from Iran, they're coming from Russia. And the more that people understand that, the more allies we are having. And I really believe that people across this political spectrum are starting to see that anti-Semitism is both a national security issue and a democratic issue. And I think we're getting a lot more allies coming.
Yeah. Ariella, what gives you hope in these moments?
She gives me hope.
I was saving you for last time for that reason.
No, our young people, they have been incredible. They have no fear. They want to be Jewish and get out and their identity and everything. So, of course, we are a great people. Am Israel is incredible, and they are incredible. So we are fine.
Yeah,
we have them.
I mean, it's amazing. Emma, what gives you hope?
Well, this is my answer as well. I think it's just like seeing this resilience of Jewish students and their, their strength. They are so strong. We don't see it first. Like, talk to them, and you will see how strong they are, how passionate they are. All of them are volunteers. They are not doing that. This is not their job, so that we're clear. This is not their job. They have studies. Some of them are also young professionals, and they are doing it out of passion for their people, for the Jewish people. And I'm proud of all of you, so continue.
Well, I think you've all given us hope. Whoops. You've given us hope. You're giving us marching orders also. You've given us inspiration. We are inspired by your leadership, by your courage, by your voices, by your vision. And we continue to work together as one Jewish people in service of Am Yisrael Chai, and to help ensure the future of the Jewish people is strong and resilient. So I want to thank all of you for being with us today, and thank all of you.
Please welcome AJC CEO Ted Deutsch.
Sorry, I beat the music out here. Good evening, everyone. And let me add my voice with this official welcome to AJC's Global Forum. I know that we're just getting started, but I am already, I'm sure like you, so moved by what we have experienced. I would like to, first of all, acknowledge Orna and Ronen and assure them that everyone in this room, everyone who is watching, and everyone in the Jewish community and around the world will continue to speak out until Omer and every hostage is returned home. To Tzvi and Dorit, I know, Tzvi and Dorit, that you were nervous to come up on stage, and I want you to know how grateful we are not only for your joining us, for the magnificent way that you honor Dor's memory, for your heroic actions, and for the inspiration that you provide to all of us in standing up for Israel. Thank you very much for being with us. And to Danny and Amos and Ariella and Anthony and Karen and Emma, we're so grateful for your participation here and for highlighting exactly what Tzvi said earlier. The Jewish people have a shared destiny. That's what this moment is about. At this unprecedented time for our community, it is incredible to see so many of us gathered here from every part of the world, standing together, united, and more committed than ever to shaping a new future for our people. And as we have just seen on this stage, from the incredible panel of global Jewish leaders, we stand at an inflection point. Spiking anti-Semitic violence, discrimination, conspiracy theories are reasons to declare a global state of emergency for the Jewish people. Because, as my good friend Anthony Hausfather points out, anti-Semitism threatens everyone, not just the Jewish community. Left unchecked, it will undermine the very values and freedoms that we cherish. That's why we at AJC believe that this moment requires, this moment demands an international, whole-of-society approach. We must all come together to fight anti-Semitism. We have 25 regional offices at AJC, 15 overseas posts, 38 partnerships with Jewish communities around the world, giving an unparalleled global capacity for targeted advocacy to tackle anti-Jewish hate. AJC's been at the forefront of addressing anti-Semitism for decades, urging global leaders to take tangible steps to protect Jewish communities. We helped craft the IRA definition of anti-Semitism, which is used globally to help better identify anti-Jewish prejudice and hate, which has prompted numerous countries to adopt it, as well as the Organization of American States, making it the standard across Latin America. And I might add, the IRA definition and its adoption has been passed by the United States House of Representatives, and the United States Senate should do the same. We pushed for creation of the position of Special Envoy to monitor and combat anti-Semitism in the U.S. State Department. We helped governments in Europe understand that anti-Semitism is their responsibility, convened civil society leaders, experts, and government officials. We helped European governments and the European Union create comprehensive national strategies to combat anti-Semitism across the continent. And building on the success of our call to action in Europe, we launched our call to action against anti-Semitism in America. This whole-of-society approach laid out clear and precise policy prescriptions that leaders across sectors all across our society and our government could follow. The White House incorporated many of these prescriptions into the U.S. national strategy to counter anti-Semitism, which proudly AJC helped to craft. And last year at Global Forum, I stood on this stage, that stage in Tel Aviv. I announced AJC's task force to implement the U.S. national strategy, and since then, I am proud to tell you, we have worked across AJC, our regional offices especially, with officials at every level of government and leaders across society, from the U.S. Small Business Administration and Department of Education to Hollywood entertainers and the NBA. We urge them to take proactive, concrete action against anti-Semitism. And with all of that experience fighting anti-Semitism, we decided that this is the time for a truly global approach, because that's what this moment demands. So driven by the international cohort of Jewish leaders and global partners that we have here today, AJC is announcing our global call to action against anti-Semitism, a detailed list of actions that governments, social media companies, schools and colleges, leaders across society and around the world can and must adopt to curb anti-Semitism. And together, united as one community and one people, we are stronger than the anti-Semitic hate rising across our societies. 38 countries and international organizations standing together as one. Together, we are answering the call for a better future for the Jewish community and for the world. So I want to thank our partners for signing on to this effort. And I'd like to list those partners as I do. Sincere thanks to our partners from Argentina and Australia, Belarus, Brazil, Britain, and Bulgaria, Chile, Colombia, Costa Rica, the Czech Republic, Ecuador, El Salvador, the European Union of Jewish Students, the European Jewish Congress, France, Greece, Guatemala, Hungary, India, Italy, Japan, Latvia, Lithuania, Moldova, Norway, Panama, Peru, Poland, Portugal, Romania, Slovakia, South Africa, Spain, the United Arab Emirates, Ukraine, Uruguay, Venezuela, and the World Union of Jewish Students. Thank you to all of you for the show of unity and show of strength that the global call to action represents. And now I am honored to call up the Jewish leaders from those communities to join me on this stage to endorse our global call to action against anti-Semitism. To those leaders, I ask you to please join us on stage. And as everyone comes up and we prepare to take a photo as we announce this global call to action, I'm going to do something, since I see that there is a ladder that will capture all of us. I want to go ahead and recognize and also invite up to stand in front of the stage our global leaders from the European Union of Jewish Students and the World Union of Jewish Students. Come on up to join us for this important moment. And by leaders, if you're a member of the European Union of Jewish Students and the World Union of Jewish Students, please come join us across the front of the stage.
Please welcome Chair of AJC's Board of Trustees, Stephen Wish. Please welcome Chair of AJC's Board of Trustees, Stephen Wish. Please welcome.
Wow, what a great global expression of Jewish solidarity. Even in the darkest moments, the Jewish people are Am Echad Belev Echad, one people with one heart. The time since October 7th has been a blur to me and to all of us. I cannot believe that over 240 days have passed with our brothers and sisters held in captivity. And we have watched anti-Semitism rise to levels we haven't seen since the 1930s, and in America of all places. AJC has been my oasis of peace and tranquility during the challenging period, as it always has been for me. Channeling my energy into my work with the fabulous, fabulous AJC team has brought me solace and optimism during these painful months. I am a proud Jew, and prouder than ever before. In addition to all the specific great work that AJC does, I cannot emphasize enough the importance of the community that AJC creates every day in our local offices around the country and around the world, here in Washington, D.C. at Global Forum, and through programs such as Access and Lift and many others. This AJC community is a blessing for all of us and is the glue that pulls us together and allows us to do all the great work that we do, particularly during these tough times. And I want to thank all of you for making our AJC community so special. AJC does many things. I want to try to summarize it in 4 brief points. 1, global advocacy. Through our 25 offices in the US, 14 around the world, and 38 international partnerships, we advocate for Israel and the Jewish people, working closely with government, diplomatic, academic, and civil society leaders. 2, education. We educate high school and college students and leaders in government, business, and universities. 3, combating anti-Semitism. We combat anti-Semitism and promote democracy and pluralism throughout the world. And 4, communication. We communicate our important messages to the world through social media, print, and television. AJC does so much for the Jewish people, but there's so much more to do. We are in a new era, and we must respond accordingly, making investments and decisions that will benefit our children and our grandchildren for decades to come. AJC, led by Ted Deutsch and all the other leaders at AJC and the executive committee, is intensely focused on how we can ensure that our work is concentrated in the areas where we can have the most impact. In order to accomplish all that we must accomplish, we need to raise money. And this is my chief responsibility as chair of the Board of Trustees, to make sure we have the money to get the work done, so that AJC can help create a world where every Jew lives safely and proudly, and where Israel flourishes. We would like to raise at least $1 million during these few days of the Global Forum. If you have already given, please consider giving some more. If you haven't given, please consider giving during these few days at Global Forum. The Jewish people and Israel need us. They need AJC more than ever before. And it really doesn't matter what level you give at. Every bit counts, and the strength of numbers is important. So I'm counting on you to have 100% participation. Whatever you can contribute, please do before you leave Global Forum. You can make this goal by speaking to an AJC staff member, using the pledge card on the back of your program, or making a gift online through the AJC Global Forum app or on the AJC website. And I'm delighted to take your orders personally, so please come up to me. And in addition to your giving, please ask friends and family. So now I would like to turn our attention to the evening's final segment. Israel and the global Jewish community have been fighting a multi-front war since October 7th. On the ground in Israel, the brave soldiers of the IDF are defending Israel from threats on multiple borders. On college campuses across the world, Jewish students have faced protests and encampments that have erupted into disruption, chaos, violence, and intimidation. We will now examine another extensive and challenging battlefield, social media. Despite the overwhelming evidence of Hamas's horrific crimes and the clear need for Israel to defend itself, we have all been immensely frustrated, even depressed, by the widespread misinformation, anti-Israel, and anti-Semitic content that has permeated the discourse on social media. Amidst this unprecedented assault, Michael Rappaport and Aviva Kompis have each in their own way become two of the most outspoken and outstanding advocates for Israel and for the Jewish people. Aviva has been one of the first to inform us of breaking news and is one of the leading voices reminding the world of the stories of the victims of October 7th and the hostages. Michael has continuously stated, and you'll see quite boldly, very creative language, what we are all thinking, and has used his charm and his humor, which I saw backstage, to educate the broader public about the realities of October 7th. They have both inspired us, and we're very excited to learn from them and hear their insights. Michael and Aviva will be in conversation with one of my favorites, AJC Chief Advocacy Officer, Bel Yoeli. Before we go to them, let me just have you look at the screen behind me for a brief video.
You don't like Israel? You. You say genocide? You. You don't want to take 60 seconds to learn what a Zionist really is? You.
They're saying that Israel has no right to exist.
Hell Hitler, he's a G. I wish you invaded all you guys, bro.
On behalf of 9 million Israelis, I say to them, no, we will not roll over and die.
History is going to record who was a perpetrator of evil, who was a bystander to evil, and who was an upstander.
So with that, I'd like to welcome Michael and Aviva to the podium.
I gotta tell you, I'm very fired up because we are on stage, as Stephen said, with two of the fiercest warriors for the Jewish people. Let's give them another round of applause. Michael and Aviva, thank you so much for coming. To start us off, I think it would be really helpful for all of us to understand how we got to this point. And Michael, let me start with you, because I think it's safe to say, before October 7th, the Jewish world and Israel were not your main activities. How did that all change?
October 7th happened, and the reaction and the shock and the horror, I'd say it took me about 36 hours for it to really sink in, and it was just a primal sort of, reaction, to defensive reaction. It was a sort of fight or flight situation. You know, I grew up in New York City. I'm what you would call a everything bagel with cream cheese lox, onions, and capers. Because they say bagel and lox Jews. I don't think that exists. I don't think anybody just eats a bagel and just lox. So, yeah, and then, here we are.
Well, we're grateful. We all have to think about that, the bagels and the lox. Got to think about that more.
I mean, does anyone have bagel with just lox. It's always something else besides lox, right? Unless you're on a diet, which I understand. It's got to be a toasted bagel or something. It can't just be a plain bagel with just lox. It's kind of dry.
2 Jews, 3 opinions. We can keep talking about it after this. Aviva, obviously you're more ingrained in the Jewish world, but that doesn't necessarily dictate that you were going to become one of the most important voices on social media for us. How did that happen for you?
So first of all, big thank you to AJC for inviting me to be here. It's a great honor and pleasure. I used to be the speechwriter for Israel at the United Nations, and there's a lot to say about working at the United Nations, working for Israel at the United Nations, which is an institution that is notorious for its bias against Israel. And one question that I used to still get asked by a lot of people is, why does Israel participate? Why would you voluntarily belong to an organization that constantly demonizes and delegitimizes? And more than that, you have to pay to be a member in good standing at the United Nations. I know, it's very hard to think about. So why do it at all? And as much as I get asked that question, that was never once a conversation inside of the delegation, because there's a mentality that says Israel has every right to participate in and contribute to global affairs. And I'll say it again. Israel has and the Jewish people have every right to participate and contribute to our communities and our society and our country, and we should accept nothing less than that. So the mentality that I bring to this work is that I call bullshit. None of this, I swore before you, lost the bet. None of this is normal or acceptable, and I will not for 1 minute of one day allow it to stand. I will not tolerate a world that treats us כמו שזה מגיע לנו, as if we deserve this, as if we deserve October 7th, as if we deserve the outbreak in anti-Semitism, as if it's normal or acceptable that even one person would be a hostage. No, absolutely not. I'm not accepting a world where Jews have to hide their identity, especially young Jews. We live in a world of identity politics where you're encouraged to identify as anyone, wear any flag, any pin, and the one thing you can't safely identify as is a Jew, forget it. Bullshit also. And I've had it with people that will speak with great sympathy about dead Jews, but won't take any meaningful action to safeguard living Jews. That's what actually matters. Because to be clear, we don't want anybody's pity. That's not what we're looking for. We're looking for this to be fixed. And so if you don't care to fix it, we don't care to hear any more empty statements.
So I have a feeling, Michael, that you're over the BS too. And let me ask you about that, because you see so much hate and misinformation on social media every single day. What is the one thing or a couple of things that you just cannot get your head around that you see that really get you riled up out of everything that you see out there?
That's a good question, because I see all sorts of stuff. You know, a lot of people ask me about the hate on social media. Like, I honestly could give 2 shits about the hate on social media. I don't articulate myself, speak on behalf of those people. I speak on behalf of Jews. I speak on behalf of Omir from New York City, from Long Island. I speak on behalf of the Jews. I speak on behalf of Israel. I speak on behalf of the anti-Semitism, you know, and as far as the hating and all that stuff, like it's like I'm like Keanu Reeves in The Matrix with the hating. It doesn't affect me. It doesn't deter me. It won't affect me. It won't deter me. It's never affected me, and it certainly won't affect me post October 7th. As far as the one thing, it's hard. I mean, I get death threats every day, which is nothing. Honestly, it's nothing. And you know, all the other things that, you know, are just, you know, like the girl on October 8th in New York at the rally, the pro-Palestinian rally that was going like this to the Israeli, that was very memorable for me because I just couldn't believe that. And then to see the posters being ripped down. I didn't see it first in New York City, but growing up in New York City, being a proud New Yorker, when I was seeing posters of, you know, the hostages and the Beebis baby being defaced and ripped down. I just equated it to after 9/11, because after 9/11 we saw missing people posters all over New York. You would never see them ripped down or questioned in any way, shape, or form. So those are the sort of things that, I mean, really sort of incited me.
Yeah, absolutely. You want to add to that?
It's very similar to my first answer, which is I open up social media, and what constantly goes through my head for whatever I read is like hell, that'll be the last word on that, and then I tweet something. That's why I tweet so much.
I think we've all experienced that feeling. Let me ask you, because you mentioned specifically the Jewish world, right? Speaking for Jewish voices. And I think there's a concern in our community that all of those on social media that are standing up for the Jewish people, especially Jews, are speaking to ourselves, are speaking to the bubble. What's your take on that? Do you think that's the case, or do you think that have you personally experienced changing hearts and minds? What's your read on that situation?
You know, I have a very, very vast platform, and I'm thankful for that now more than ever. You know, who I'm speaking to and who it's getting through to, I spend too much time trying to contrive that and worry about that. I just think it's a waste of time. Obviously, I think, you know, I spoke to somebody in the social media, Twitter and Facebook, and they said, you know, your audience is the same, you know. So, but I just can't spend too much time on it. I just try to do as much as I can do, be as loud and as aggressive as I possibly can, because so much of what we see on social media, and social media is what it is, you know, so much of that towards Jews and Zionists is so aggressive. That's why I try to be aggressive back. And this is an aggressive time. This is not a passive time. We're in a fucking war, and Jews, what it means to be Jewish is changing every single day. You know, how it's going to end, I don't know, but our identity and how we're perceived in the world is changing every single day, and I just try to you know, not focus on myself and focus on the people that are, you know, really still going through it and have went through it.
So this is something that I spend a lot of time thinking about and actually researching as well. When I'm not on X, then I co-run a nonprofit called Boundless, and we look at some of the harms of social media. Thank you to the one person who knows my nonprofit. It's very nice. Thank you all. One of the things we're trying to understand is what is exactly happening on social media below the surface of what we're seeing. And there's so much that's taking place in addition to the echo chambers that Michael described. So first of all, the rule on social media is if it enrages, it engages. So the things that are going to perform the best are the things that are really divisive for us as human beings, that preclude us from being able to be in conversation and build relationships. So the most angry, vitriolic, hateful, disgusting, vile things are what are going to be amplified. I always liken it to the Colosseum in ancient Rome. It's a blood sport, and you have some people that are fighting it out in the middle, and then you have all the crowds lustily cheering for it. That is not a forum to change hearts and minds and to build relationships. So that's part one. The second is that there's very clear algorithmic manipulation. You might have read news stories about TikTok. There's studies that have been done that show that TikTok is suppressing certain content, mostly related to China, and it's amplifying other content that maligns the United States. So it's clearly what's in the interest of the Chinese government. Then you have the bots, inauthentic activity. The estimates are that 26% of the conversation on social media are robots. There's a 1 in 4 chance that whomever you are currently fighting with on social media is a robot. And they will always have the last word. I actually it's not never, but almost never read my comments or my DMs because my baseline assumption is you're a Hamas or you're a robot. There's nothing to engage with.
And you should call them robots. Sometimes they'll be like, I don't speak to robots, which makes me crazy because I'm actually speaking to a robot. But I will tell them I don't speak to you, robot.
That's exactly what I mean. Sometimes I go,
which is so nuts.
Sometimes I want to go, like hell, that's the last word, AG201C418. And I'm like, well, maybe I don't have to engage with that particular one. And then you have foreign intervention. There's also studies showing that other governments are playing here. The World Economic Forum puts out a study every January where they look at the greatest threats to the world in the short term in 2 years and the long term 10 years. This year, for the first time, there were two new things that made that list for the short-term threats to the world. One is misinformation campaigns, and the other is disinformation campaigns. This is a problem that plagues us, but it's actually a problem of countries and societies in the international community. Half of the global population is going to go to the polls this year, and there's a lot at play in terms of why to run disinformation campaigns and how to sway public opinion. So when we're thinking about what's happening on social media, we have to look beyond the surface of what do I tweet, what do I say, and try to address some of those deeper level problems.
Absolutely, that's really insightful, thank you. Speaking of beyond social media, let's step away from social media for one moment. Michael, you are part of a small but mighty group of Jewish actors, comedians, entertainers who are being vocal, but you've been critical of Jews in the industry who are not speaking out. And I think many of us are frustrated. Why aren't more celebrities speaking with moral clarity? Can you give us a sense, is there more support behind the scenes? What is holding people back? What can we do to get more people who are famous to speak out?
Well, I've spoken out against them as a whole because I resent them. I resent my profession who infamously, iconically, going back to when Marlon Brando had the woman at the Academy Awards, to every other actor talking about, climate change, penguins dying, LGBTQ, Black Lives Matter, pigeons dying, and everything under the sun. And to see through this period, particularly during the awards ceremonies in January and February, not one person said the word hostages. After the Emmys, I woke up the next morning and I was embarrassed. I was embarrassed that I was associated with these people because I know that so many of prominent Jewish actors, specifically Jewish actors and actresses who've made careers off of being the neurotic Jew and the stereotypical Jew and leading with their Judaism they don't have to be as bombastic as I am, but just to not say anything simply about the hostages. It could be free the hostages and whatever else you want. I don't know. There isn't something going on behind the scenes. The people who have said something have said something. It's 240-something days now. If they haven't said something now, they're not going to say something. I don't know why. I think some of them are Free Palestine people. I think some of them are totally misinformed, and I think some of them are scared. And whatever it is, it's unacceptable, especially knowing that artists, like I said, have spoken out and speak out every single year. And next year it'll be something else. It'll be some, agenda that people will talk out on. And it just somehow the only thing that got mentioned at the Academy Awards was a Jewish director who made a Holocaust movie refuting his Judaism, and a bunch of people clapping for it. This shit was embarrassing to me.
Yeah. So well said. It was embarrassing to us as well. Aviva, I also want to ask you about your expertise because you're a warrior on social media, but you're also an educator, as has come up. And tomorrow, AJC is launching our 2024 opinion survey of Jews in the United States. And I want to highlight a couple of stats for you and get your reaction. More than 1 in 5 American Jews said they had received 0 formal education about Israel. And those who reported no education about Israel were least likely to say they felt more connected to Israel since October 7th, followed by those who categorized their education as weak. In contrast, 62% of those who characterized their education about Israel as strong said they felt more connected to the Jewish state after October 7th. So to me, this says, yes, we need to educate the world about anti-Semitism and about Israel, but we have a lot of work to do in our own backyard. So where do we start?
Yeah, it's critically important. We do this research at Boundless also. We're doing a lot of public opinion polling as it relates to the war, as it relates to anti-Semitism, with a focus on speaking to non-Jewish audiences. There are 2 things that correlate with support for Israel. There are 2 things that correlate with standing up for anti-Semitism. One is age, and the other is education. But I could just say education twice, because the reason we have an age problem is because younger people either don't have the education, or because whatever affiliation they have, we have too many Jewish institutions that decided they're not going to talk about or educate about Israel, which now to our enormous detriment. We saw this even a few years ago, that for young people that said that Israel was a frequent topic of conversation in their homes, 85% feel connected to Israel. For those that said that it wasn't ever spoken about, it's fewer than half, 45%, say that they feel connected to Israel. It's equally important when we're talking about non-Jewish audiences and anti-Semitism. We did a study that found 2/3 of non-Jewish Americans do not know what the word Zionism means. Of the ones that do know, so the 1/3 that do know, more than 90% will say that anti-Semitism is a problem in this country, and more than 80% will say that they feel that they must personally do something in order to address anti-Semitism. So it gives you a sense of just how critical it is that we begin to rethink how we educate about Israel to all different audiences.
Well, we have a lot of work to do on a lot of fronts, it seems. I want to ask you both one final question, because we believe at AJC that you're not alone in this work, and you've been incredible, but there's a lot for all of us to do on social media and in the other areas that we mentioned. What's your charge to everyone in this room? There's something keeping you going. What can keep us going to join in this fight? How can we help?
Do not accept anti-Jewishness, anti-Semitism, anti-Zionism the same way we collectively as Jews haven't accepted and we've stood up for every single thing under the sun. Do not accept it. It's not okay. It's not to be normalized. It's not to be accepted in any way, shape, or form. And to continue, I could say that I have educated myself and armed myself with so much knowledge and history and armed myself with the confidence. Because the more confidence you have and the more understanding you have of who we are, where we've come from, where we're going, and all those things, the more you can stand up. It's helped me enormously. I mean, I have been in a humongous education in the last 6 or 7 months, and it gives me the confidence to be able to speak up and to stand up and, you know, and to fight the way I do. Because it's like I said, being Jewish is changing, and you know, being recognized as a Jew is changing. And you know, for a lot of us that are adults in here, we're fine with that. But the younger people, you know, going forward, you know, when the dust settles, it's going to be like, what kind of Jew are you? Are you this kind of Jew or that kind of Jew? And people need to be comfortable to say, you know, that they're a proud, strong Jew, and if need be, this is why.
We talk a lot about what we got wrong since October 7th, but I want to tell you the most important thing that we got right, and it's actually the most important thing that matters. And that's, over the last 8 months, we've gotten to see the character of the Israeli and Jewish people in a way that we study and research and poll and do all these things, but we got to see it in real life. What do I mean by that? It started on October 7th, when you saw that once Israelis understood the magnitude of the attack and that our enemy was preying on the weakest members of society, in the way that they rushed towards the danger. Whether or not they were in the army, whether or not they had a uniform or a weapon, they went south in huge numbers, and a lot lost their life, but there's also stories of heroism. And then we saw tens of thousands of Israelis that flew home. At what is really the most dangerous time since Israel's existence, they went home to be together. And then we saw Israeli civil society rise up in a way we have never seen before to take care of the needs of evacuees and survivors and one another, people in reserves and the army and so forth. It was unprecedented. Around the world, you saw global Jewry raise phenomenal, really phenomenal sums of money. Every El Al flight was stuffed to the gills with duffel bags, with equipment for the army. I mean, was it to Army standard? Did they need it? Did it matter? We were sending it. That was the most important part of it. Not important. We have to send it. And the public campaigns to free the hostages, the Shabbat tables, the bill. I mean, we have been absolutely incredible. What you have seen for the first time in the last 8 months is an understanding that we are in this together. We've seen the character of who we are, and it's magnificent. So what motivates me? And what should motivate all of you is to be worthy of the people that we belong to, because they deserve the very, very best. And if I may end just with one thing that's always in my mind, which is that what the late Rabbi Sachs said. He said, there are always going to be people who look down upon Israel and the Jews, and the only response to that is to walk with your head held high, so that they have no choice but to look up in order to be able to see you.
Well, thank you both. for doing exactly that and for modeling that for our community and the Jewish people. Thank you so much for coming. We're so grateful. Thank you.